All right, folks, welcome to the Sheep Week 2021 Canada Sheep Update. We are going to be interviewing a few people from around various parts of Canada, provinces and territories where we can hunt wild sheep. Today, I'm joined by Craig Kisselback from Terminus Mountain Outfitters. Craig, welcome.
Yeah, morning, Adam. How you doing?
Morning. It is reasonably
Yeah,
early.
for
Not
us.
yeah,
Yeah.
not too early. Who knows when people are going to be watching
Yeah,
this, right? But Craig, why don't you take a couple minutes, just talk about your background in the space, a little bit of background on Terminus, and then we'll just dive into the topics we plan to cover.
sure. Well, I've been in I guess the guiding and outfitting industry for probably about 25 years now, maybe a little longer. I've been saying that for a few years, but outfitting about 15. I'm in northern BC now. I was in the Yukon, partner Darren. Before that, I was in BC prior to that in another area. Yeah, it's been, I've got 8 years of post-secondary, and here I am as an outfitter owner and operator. So enjoy the industry, enjoy the people, enjoy trying to do something for wildlife also as a management perspective, and doing our part for something tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I really enjoy Wild Sheep organization and what they do, not just for sheep, but in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a common theme amongst most of the people I've met through WSF. Is it's obviously we love to talk hunting and big rams and all that stuff, but there's that underlying theme with, like I said, just about everyone I've spoken with, that it is about tomorrow, and by tomorrow we mean 10 years from now, 20 years from now,
Yeah,
30
yeah.
years from now, 100 years from now. So before we get into covering a little bit of this, as we all know, crazy year that was, and looking forward into 2021, which is where I think we want to spend most of our time. For those that don't know or haven't heard of Terminus, which is probably going to be a rare few that tune into this seminar, but what what do you guys offer at Terminus in terms of hunts? I mean, obviously we've got you have stone sheep, but I think it's worth speaking to the breadth of species available at Terminus, because it I think it will inform some of our discussion as we carry on here this morning.
Sure. Yeah, Terminus is, it's obviously a very special area to me. I've always kind of, I'm fortunate to have it, to be honest. I always looked at it. I was watching it when I was a young guy guiding in the Yukon or NWT, and Gary Moore owned it, and a lot of history there. It's a very remote area. It has very good mixed bag, which is something that always, not just sheep, which always excited me about the areas, because I always, I spent 9 months a year guiding different species, from black bears to cougar to bobcat to sheep and moose and caribou and elk and goats. And this is an area that has, stone sheep, and, it's got some good quality sheep to offer. It's got good moose, really good moose because of the remoteness. Elk. It's got caribou, mountain caribou that seem to be doing very well. Mountain goats, good population of grizzlies still, even though we're not hunting them right now in northern BC, but hopefully that'll change with that fight that's going forward with the government and trying to make them realize to use biology over emotion and misinformation. So yeah, it's got a really good mixed bag of species, so it makes it exciting to hunt. I think it's exciting for guides as well as hunters, that you get a diversity all season. It's always something different for us. So yeah, we enjoy it. We can do backpack, horseback, pretty much. I can, some boats, I can accommodate a variety of hunters and abilities, whether they're bad knees or overweight or, and I, not in a bad way, but maybe you're 75 years old, right? And it's just hard to exercise. Stuff's
Sure.
worn out, and
Yeah.
or young guys that are gung ho and want to give her shit and tackle, the biggest, steepest stuff, right? And
Yeah.
go get her. So,
Yeah.
it's we're definitely happy with it, with our family and our business, and yeah, fortunate to have it.
Yeah. Well, as a BC resident who has respectfully stayed the what out of that area,
Appreciate it.
yeah, no worries, man, no worries. I mean, I've got another personal bias on that one, because Nolan would probably slap me upside the head
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I
Well,
if I came.
And you know what, that's something that maybe on a different note there, Adam, you know, is resident hunting is part of
Mhm.
every hunting industry, and you really have to, whether, even when I was in the Yukon, you know, we had our fair share of resident hunters, which is fine. You know, everybody's got to just work together and do our part, and it's not a bad thing. I started doing this because I was an avid hunter,
Right.
and then I went to guiding and I loved it, and then you get to be an outfitter and you don't do as much guiding, but it's your role changes all the time. But same with resident hunting. It's not a bad thing. It's a healthy thing for everybody, and we all got to work together as hunters to move forward with wildlife too, right? So it's an important niche that we need to do better at. Really is everybody working together. We're all hunters in the end. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and especially if we put the wildlife first, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
which is a good segue. So let's dive in. Um, let's start with you know, your, I guess, view of the year that was 2020, how that impacted the business for one, which is pretty simple for everyone to understand. I think, given the fact that borders were closed and travel restrictions were in place, and it was just one of the most odd years I've seen in my reasonably young life. But speak to what what you saw, how you adapted to you know the constant need to adapt. I mean, you and I
yeah.
were talking yesterday, right? It was month to month to month to month. You weren't really sure what was coming down the pipe, so to speak. So spend a bit of time on that, and then I think we should transition to, I don't know if we would call it a silver lining, but what is looking positive, or what may be positive in 2021, depending on what happens with this ever changing
Sure.
landscape we're trying to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah, 2020 was definitely, I don't think anything the hunting tourism industry, fishing tourism, any tourism has seen, well, I don't think the world has seen in this aspect of in the dynamic that we just had. The tough part for a lot of people. I'm located, by the way, about 100 miles south of the Yukon border, so I'm very northern,
Mhm.
central, remote, all fly in type of hunting. Most of my hunting, 90% of it, 95% of it, is in the fall. I know down south where I live, a lot of guys obviously were first to deal with it. Were the spring black bear guys, which obviously that's when COVID kind of rules came through in March, and lockdowns and all that good stuff around the world. So in saying that, it seemed like for Canada, other countries were flat out shut down. They had a little bit longer term. Maybe they knew, and like New Zealand knew they were down for a while. Canada, it seemed to be this misconception that maybe COVID was going to be around for 4 to 6 weeks. Kind of get past the flatten the curve is what everybody heard for a long time, and we were still flattening it. And so in saying that, we were on a 30-day window, um, and for operations like myself in northern BC and a lot of my neighbors, it takes a great amount of time and planning. We actually, we plan from, in 19, we're bringing in, horse supplies and fuel and all that stuff to get ready for next season. We're always continually preparing, especially in flying areas. There's a saying, you never fly air. So if
Mhm.
there's anything left in a plane, if there's 5 pounds left, you put stuff on it, whether it's parts for, horse tack or quads or gear, supplies, etc. You're bringing it in. And in saying that, so we spend really, say 19, we were getting ready in 19 right through from October, right to when clients come uh, to have that hunt ready. So August 1st, a guy shows up, your guides in the mountains, horses are shod. Like where we are, our horses run wild. So we catch our horses, some of them we're breaking, we're saddling and getting them shod and all that good stuff. Right. And it's just time consuming. It takes me about 3 weeks to get fully operational. Some of my camps are a 6-day horseback ride where, you mentioned Nolan, one of my guides that works for you, he's got a long trek and then setting up. Right. So having that 30-day window and all the expenses you really have to pay before guys even get there. You know, you're spending 75% of your, you know, what guys make, you know, payments on their hunts is going towards that. That's their cash flow is going to that. So you know, we get ready, and then we were waiting to hear, you know, like I just told clients, look, we'll wait till July 21st, we'll be ready, you know, and it was August 21st, and it's September 21st, you know. So unfortunately, nothing ever happened. We were ready, willing, and able, but obviously out of uh, any outfitter's control or hunter's control is, you know, superseded by the government, right? So there was travel bans, and you know, we weren't allowed to operate. A lot of guys did, you know, take a few Canadians, trying to keep guides and crew working because, you know, like myself, I kept my main crew working, you know, at a loss. But you know, they didn't. A lot of those guys do spring black bear, which wasn't there, or do fall, you know, whitetails and mule deer, which also wasn't there, you know, once they leave, right? So you know, you try and hang on to your crew because really you know, I've always said you can be the best outfitter in the world, but without a good crew, you're nothing.
Hmm.
You know, and that's, you know, I value my crew as some of the best, and I'm sure there's other outfitters that are able to say the same thing, no doubt. There's a lot of good, passionate guys in the industry, and you know, they're choosing to do that line of work. I mean, really, they're hard workers. They work long days. They work every day. They could do other stuff and be very successful,
Hmm.
no doubt about it. They're choosing to do that type of work, and work for guys like us that you know, we work the crap out of them all the time, right? So uh, moving forward, you know, 2020, everybody's probably glad it's came and went. You know, uh, obviously a lot less hunters in the field, right? I think for everybody that I've talked to, at least in the north, I know they were, you know, drastically down, right? But they worked on camps, worked on trails, worked on infrastructure. You know, everybody kept busy, trying to make the best of it. And, you know, to be honest, you know, taking in a moderate amount of wildlife, you know, like for myself, I have a quota of sheep, so it's not that you can over harvest it.
Hmm.
You know, it's a regulated thing. All stone sheep in BC are, so we can't, unfortunately, you know, whatever tags you got for 2020 are gone. You know, we
Hmm.
haven't heard, there's been no talk of compensation, there's been no talk of making it up over the next 6, 7, 8 years, whatever, a small amount a year. Because I mean, in the end, it everybody's, you know, if you had a quota of 5 or 10, it's not sustainable to go the next year and just double up.
Right.
You know, so nobody wants that, right? Everybody wants to still keep high age averages, good quality hunts. So it's a tough deal because those tags are absolutely gone. You know, they're not an unlimited resource that you could just go, well, you know, I only take 10 moose, but I really could take 30. Next year I'll take 20. It's just not that way. So it's going to be tough. It's a hard hit to the industry. I know everybody's feeling it. It's been there's been videos out. You know, Gray Thornton did a video about kind of, you know, sharing the impact. Jim Shockey did one for SCI, Dallas Safari Club. You know, just trying to bring light of you know, what everybody's going through, and it's a tough time. You know, everybody's really hopeful that the vaccine and maybe rapid testing will be you know, that'll come through and change some of that and make international travel, you know, guys' wives can go back to Mexico and relax and have a good time, you know, with a reasonable amount of safety, right? Yeah, I mean, we're all optimistic, very optimistic. And like I said to you yesterday, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know how long the tunnel is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think this fall there's a very strong chance of it.
Hmm.
I mean, we've turned a corner. Before we didn't even have a vaccine, so I mean, shit, this is great, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
to be honest. So it's, I think there's going to be lots of critters out there. You know, I think it'll be good hunting all over, whether if you're in the NWT, the Yukon, or anywhere in North America, you know, that has had a lapse, you know, or
Hmm.
a break, right, a bit. Most of the areas, I mean, I don't know anybody that in the industry that's you know, a good reputable outfitter that over harvests anyways. So I mean, it's all very sustainable and hunting older animals and stuff like that. They really care about the areas and longevity.
Yeah.
But Yeah, we're all looking forward to it. That's for sure. It's been
Yeah,
a crunch for everybody financially, right? So
no doubt. Well, and you and I touched on that yesterday as well, right? Is I think, I mean, you hit on, I don't know if we would call them misconceptions, but we all take different things for granted, right? You think, I mean, not that I want to get into the shipping delays in Canada around the Christmas
yeah,
time frame, right? But
yeah,
you take a service like Canada Post for granted until they're absolutely overwhelmed with new circumstances, and then you're like, well, why the heck can't this get done right?
yeah,
And whether it's companies that I mean, realistically, owning an outfit is like owning a giant commercial space, right? I mean, yeah, it's not in a building, and yeah, you're not paying well, maybe you are. I'm sure you've worked out the math of what you're paying per thousand square kilometers or acre or hectare or whatever, right? But
yeah,
it's pretty similar, and you got to continue to carry those costs. You got to continue to invest in your people, and you got to continue to invest in your infrastructure. And I think you know certain outfits, there's no question, right? You can kind of flip it on and off on a whim, right? You can drive in, open up your cabin, your lodge, whatever, and turn on the quad and start hunting bears or whatever the case may be,
yeah,
but these big remote northern outfits, which are what most people dream of, that's their bucket list, are a challenge to manage, period, let alone with these sort of restrictions in place. And so it's yeah, I'm glad you touched on that, because I think it's important for the audience, the listeners, to understand that it's not just you spin up the plane and let's get hunting, right? There's a lot that
yeah.
goes into it year to year.
Yeah,
um
and I think a lot of like, there is a misconception there, but it's not, it's just, it's just maybe it's just us doing a poor job uh giving people that knowledge, right? I
mhm.
mean, usually it takes something like this to all of a sudden go, hey, well, I had 4 cabins that got destroyed by a grizzly bear in the off season. We got to rebuild them. My neighbor, his kitchen got $50,000 worth of damage from a grizzly bear. We're fixing airplanes, horse trailers, saddles. A lot of us got 30, 40 saddles that we got to go through after you use them for 90 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some stuff wears out. You're buying new tents and all that good stuff, right? So I mean, myself, like I keep a guy in there in the winter because my horses are on, they run loose.
Mm-hmm.
We just set them free after the season, then we go get them. So he kind of monitors that and looks after that. But there's a lot of expenses, and a lot of these, a lot of guys have a misconception of going, well, geez, look how much those hunts are.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's because the cost of operation just is very high. I mean, it's extremely high, and
Mm-hmm.
whether you take the hunters like in 2020, you still have the grazing leases, the park use permits, all these different expenses from government that just they don't go away. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, whether you're using it or not, you're still getting an invoice, and it's just the cost of doing business, right? So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it's but on a positive note, we've turned a corner, I think, in a real positive way, and everybody's I think adapted well. Like talking to my hunters, I've had a lot of guys, especially in business, that have been very sympathetic, and very understanding. They may not have understood at first what's going on, but when you talk to them, they're like, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know. And they want to hunt. Guys are dying to,
I bet.
really to get up here. I mean, I had guys even every 30 days, it was almost to the point where you're like, look, boys, I will get a hold of you. Trust me, when we get the green light, I'm giving everybody the
Yeah,
green
trust me.
light,
Yeah.
but you're getting lots of there was lots of emails, lots of phone calls, of just guys going, hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And it's like, hey, that's above my pay grade, of what's happening with the border, right? I just got to concentrate on what we need to do and be ready for you. So yeah, it's exciting what's happening, I think, in the industry as far as if we can pull through this, I think we can get through anything really.
Yeah.
Whether and we talked about the connection, Wild Sheep with outfitting, and SCI, some of these big organizations that do a great job for wildlife all over. Really outfitting needs to make it, because it's we're also interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to have donations if guys can't afford to give them and raise money, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and hunters to come and have a good product to sell different hunters, not just in the US, but all over the world, and or in Canada, like we
Mhm.
saw last year. It was great to see more than, I had, usually I have a couple of Canadians a year, four sometimes maybe out of, 38, 40 hunters, but it was great to have, a couple more than that, right? Knocking on 10 kind of thing, right? For
Mhm.
various animals. So, hopefully that keeps up too, right? It was great to see Canadians see that there was an opportunity to go do some hunting, that some spots opened up that may not be available for a couple years, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
because they're just full. So yeah, we just got to keep going.
Yeah. Well, and I certainly know probably a good handful of guys, and one of them actually came and hunted with you that I don't want to say took advantage, but thought, well, shoot, maybe I ought to try a guided hunt in my home province or an adjacent province or territory or something like that. And so, the common thread amongst any business owner I've spoken with is, I mean, yeah, we all took it on the chin, but at the same time, like you said, if we can get through this, we can get through anything. And like most things, I mean, you go into a sheep hunt, you think you're tough and full of piss and vinegar, and you come out the other side beaten,
Yeah,
battered, and bruised, and hopefully successful, but you're better
yeah,
for it, right? And I think you know
yeah,
I've heard Gray say this in various ways, but if anybody can get through this sort of stuff and come out the other side, maybe not with a smile right away, but eventually with a smile, it's the sheep and mountain hunting community, right? I mean, we don't shy away from tough stuff, that's for
that's right.
sure.
Yeah,
um
yeah. There's a mental toughness there for sure. No doubt about it.
yeah. And for the listeners, the audience, etc., I think that's something we need maybe to remind ourselves of sometimes, like this, the old phrase, this too shall pass. And you touched on the lower hunting pressure. I mean, I haven't triple checked this stat, but I was told recently by a credible source, I would say, that overall thin horn harvest in BC is way down, like way down, because it was predominantly residents and then a very, very, very light operation for outfits like yours. And BC and Alberta are, you know I mean, just by definition, or by nature of the population bases, um, going to have a lot more resident hunters, climbing around the hills looking for critters, as opposed to, say, the Yukon Territory or the NWT. Not to say that there aren't residents and hard charging residents in those two territories, but there's just fewer of them. Um, and so, for those listening, thinking, well, shoot, did the residents go get out there and whack and stack a bunch of sheep? I mean, sure. I mean, you and I talked about this. There's probably a few more residents, if not a lot more residents out there saying, okay,
Yep.
this is my chance, right? The outfitters
Yeah.
aren't on those Rams opening day, yada yada yada. You and I both well know that can be the mindset, right? But
Yeah.
the stats I've been shared show that there's, yeah, at minimum, maybe there's not necessarily more sheep out there, maybe arguably, depending on the area, depending on the region. But at minimum, age class will have been improved, right? There'll be a lot of Rams
Yeah.
are going to be just that 1 year older for you to chase if we do have the opportunity, we meaning the broader Wild Sheep Foundation audience, to get back into Canada. And obviously I'm talking about Americans and international clients here, but get back into Canada and have a hell of a hunt. And you touched on the fact that when you when you still ran even a light crew and invested in your team and your infrastructure, that's going to ensure that if we do have a season this year that allows for non-residents, um, you're going to have as great of an experience, and maybe even a better experience than you might think, and maybe you would have had, because there are Rams out there that are going to be that 1 year older, and you guys didn't slack off in terms of maintaining everything you need to run a tight operation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it was a good opportunity, I think, for various areas to reach out into parts of their area they haven't been and do some
Right.
exploring and stuff like that. I mean, and back to resident hunting. I think one has to remember is a lot of guides were flat out unemployed this year.
Mm.
And that there's some of the best hunters in BC or the Yukon. NWT, I would say most guys are probably foreign to there. I think their resident harvest is almost nil.
Right.
But at least when I was working in there. But you know, even the Yukon, you know, there's a lot of good guides and guys that just weren't working right. So I mean, it gave them an opportunity to you know, get out there and do some hunting for themselves and remember why they were guides, you know, and
Great
you
point.
know, yeah, and I mean it's important, right? I tried to do that with my crew this year. You know, I didn't really want them going anywhere else to hunt because I knew they were itching. I mean they love hunting. They wait all year to hunt that fall, and you know they're perfectly happy getting clients' animals. They love it. That's why they do it. But you know, when there's no clients, their eyes get buggy, right? You know, and I just flat out, I just let my crew hunt in my area. You know, I just pick a species for them, or what do you want to, you know, want a goat or you know caribou, or what are you thinking? And I just told them, look, stay here, and you know, I'd rather nowhere else that they get an animal than with me. I mean, they're my crew, right? I don't want them going to my neighbors and
Mhm.
being seen there. I find that disrespectful,
Mhm.
you know, really to my neighbors and their business, right? So I just tried to keep them in house and let them go have fun once our clients left, and they did. And yeah, I mean, you just got to make the best of it, right? I mean, that's why we, that's why they do what they do, is they love hunting. And in saying that, you know, a lot of the guides I think that did get to hunt this year, and maybe the you know more residents were hunting, and part of them were guides. You know, they're also looking at age class. They're
Absolutely.
they're guys that are, you know, experienced guides, you know, that are they're taking the time to harvest, you know, and walking away from stuff that they shouldn't hunt, you know, or
Mhm.
shouldn't harvest, right? So I don't think it was a bad thing at all. I think it was, you know, I think the numbers are down for sure,
Mhm.
from previous years because of the outfitter, the lack of the outfitter impact
Mhm.
in general. But I think the age class is going to be great. I know like my guys in there right now, and I know winter's been really good in the north
Mhm.
so far. So, you know, that's a good sign for animals and critters too, right? So I think yeah, I think everything's shaping up anyways for a good 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think the way to cap this off, Craig, and you and I touched on this in a different way yesterday, but you know, there are the things we can control through this, and there's a whole pile of stuff we cannot, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned the border, right? You have no control over whether the border will or will not open up or can open up. And I know, and we don't need to unpack it because we're getting a little tight on time here, but I know full well that every single, territory or province and, the guide outfitting community and conservation community, everyone was trying to figure out a way to get clients in safely
Yeah.
and at risk of that being received poorly. What I mean by that is within the boundaries of what our government said we could or could not do, be that the federal government or the provincial or territorial governments.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and so, all of us were trying to navigate, you know, rules and restrictions that are out of our hands. And like you said, those were on 30-day cycles. So I mean, you might think you got a runway in front of you that's X, length, and next thing you know, it's longer, it's shorter. I mean, you just didn't know. And so,
Yeah.
I think it certainly wasn't for lack of trying. And I know that full well from every province and territory we're going to cover in this update for the Sheep Week Summit. But the key I think we want people to take away is, if those things that are out of our control, like the borders, travel restrictions, etc., are lifted or minimized, or solutions are found like rapid testing, etc., to
Yeah.
bring people in, it's going to be a hell of a season. It was a
Yeah.
tough season in 2020, but I think 2021 is going to be a hell of a season.
Yeah. I think so too. I think there's you know, outfitters, guides, hunters, everybody's itching to get going and, you know, and make some memories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Craig, that's great stuff. Really appreciate your time this morning. I know it was not that early a start, but early
No, it's
enough.
all good. Yeah.
And you have a great day there.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. You too.
Take care. Well, folks, welcome to the next part of our Canada Update seminar for Sheep Week 2021, the virtual summit, of course. I have Harold Grindy, who I guess technically you're from Alberta, but operate, of course, in the NWT. Correct, Harold?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's right. Well, Harold, I don't think you and certainly your outfit need a ton of introduction to this audience, but spend a few minutes on your background in the sheep community, your involvement with WSF and all the various agencies that you may be involved with. I assume you are, and the history of your outfit, and then we'll transition to the main topics for today.
Okay. Yeah. So as I think most of the audience is aware, I'm the owner operator of Gaynor River. Went there as a client actually in 1996 and harvested a beautiful ram, and went back and eventually bought into the area and was partners with Bill McKenzie, the previous owner, for several years, and as a silent partner, and worked to improve things, and eventually took over with some of my family as my silent partners now. I have a brother and a niece and a nephew that are involved as well. One of these years, we'll see them taking over, I assume. Anyway, yeah, my guiding career started when I was in high school. I got a guide license in Alberta and took friends and relatives out hunting in Alberta. Went to the Yukon to guide professionally starting in 1980. Worked for the Sutherland Bay Outfitters there for 5 years, and when that area changed hands, I took a job running the hunts in an area in northern BC, Bill McKenzie's old area, which was where I met Bill, and spent the first year just learning the area with Bill, and then did the hunts there for 2 years, and decided to take a break from it for a while and got into construction. In 1996, I went to Gaina as a hunter, and then bought in 97 and been there ever since. So yeah, the years go by. I've been involved at Gaina now for 25 years. It seems like it's gone by just in a flash, but it's been a wonderful career, and the outfitting industry has always been good to me. And I have worked hard to try and give back to the sheep community, to the industry. I've been president of AMO, the Association of Mackenzie Mountains Outfitters, for I think 8 years now. I was one of the founding members of Alberta Wild Sheep Foundation, the first life member of Alberta Wild Sheep Foundation, served as president for 2 terms. Back quite a few years ago, I also represent the Northwest Territories on the Canadian Federation of Outfitters Associations. Did a stint when we had a hunting and angling advisory panel to the federal government as the rep for the Northwest Territories as well. Under our current government, that panel has been disbanded. But yeah, I've always believed in giving back and doing what I can to support the industry, and been very involved in lots of different boards and stuff in the Northwest Territories. We had a Stakeholders Wildlife Act advisory group that still meets occasionally, but helped in the drafting of a new Wildlife Act for the Northwest Territories. And yeah, just do what I can, where I can. I think I became a life member of National Wild Sheep Foundation, which was FNAWS at that time, of course, about in 1984 or 5. So I've been involved in wild sheep for quite a while, and always a believer in the organization and a supporter of the organization. I think they do great work, and we have a great leadership team now with Gray at the helm.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's also no doubt that your reputation preceded you both on both fronts, the outfitting side and the giving back side. So I'm very grateful for your time today, Harold. I guess where I would start is, given your tenure, and your tenure meaning time, not tenure meaning the tenure of the outfit, but your time in the industry and experience. 2020 was probably one of the most odd years to have lived through.
Yes, very unusual. Took me by surprise, really. I felt when COVID came along by spring, it was like any other flu, it would fade out, and we could find a way to operate, and pushed hard for that right up until it was too late, with the federal border being closed and the NWT border being closed to travelers as well. Yeah, it was unbelievable to me that we lost a full season where we really had no revenues across the industry in the north. The Yukon was lucky that they were allowed to bring in some Canadian guys, but even though they had a few clients, it was at beat up prices and not the same. But for young guys that are trying to make payments, it was at least a help. I was pretty sure that we could get that far in the territories as well, but in the end, our government and the health officials there felt that the risk was too high, and they weren't willing to allow that to happen. And we can all have our opinions, whether we agree or disagree with the way we've reacted to COVID as a society. But it was an unusual year and a tough year for the industry. Thankfully, for many of us who have been around a while, we can survive this. For some of my heart goes out to the young guys who are just bought areas and are trying to make payments and lose a year's income. It's tough.
Yeah, no doubt. And there's definitely at least in BC, and I know this is the case as well in the Yukon to an extent. I'm not as well read or up to speed on the NWT, but there has been a passing of the torch in a lot of the bigger, and let's call a spade very expensive outfits in the past few years. And I know a few of those guys that are in that ownership position, and yeah, I mean they did everything they could, and I think that's the prevailing theme, right? Is that people did what they could to either make it through by bringing Canadians in, or investing in their team and their infrastructure to make sure that camps are ready for 2021. If we do end up with a season that allows international hunters and visitors in 2021, and it's a lot of people will have lots to say about the year that was, but I think no surprise for this community is we're no strangers to tough work and tough circumstances. And I think most people say, what, it was a hard year. We took it on the chin, but we're going to be stronger for it. And I think, like you and I spoke about on the phone earlier this week, if we do get a season this year, where outfits can bring in international clients, it actually stands to be a heck of a year, just from the standpoint of either complete lack of pressure or very, very, very minimal pressure in various provinces or territories. So talk a little bit about what you guys did during 2020 to adapt to this, and whether that's in the outfit specifically, Harold, or through all the organizations and agencies, boards, et cetera, you're a part of that. What were the efforts that went into making the best out of 2020 from your perspective?
Well, I can touch on that a little, Adam. I think I agree with you completely that the people in this industry are very resilient, and you learn how to adapt and roll with the punches when you live a life in the bush and you have to get by with what you have. So that comes pretty natural to this community. I think we also need to recognize the desire and the will to partake in the hunting of the clients. Like, we basically across the spectrum, we didn't have an exodus of people wanting their money back. People who had deposits down on hunts were perfectly willing to wait. They just say, I don't want my money back, I want to go hunting. If we have to wait till next year, that's what we have to do. And so I would like to just note that for the audience, that we as outfitters appreciate so much the quality of people that our clients are, and that we did not see that people angry or mad, because people were very understanding and very supportive of us in our moves to move people forward a year. However, each outfitter did their own thing in dealing with that, but I think that's important to note as well. We, of course, worked hard. I, as president of AMO, am also the chair of the NWT Tourism Association, which is a DMO and an industry organization combined. I worked hard in countless meetings with NWT government officials to try and find some way to get the border open with limited travel for, our clients are very high yield, very low risk. They're healthy individuals. We have remote camps where there's not much danger of community transmission. We just we worked so hard to try and find a way to be open, and in the end it didn't happen. Some of us chose to go to our camps with a few crew and do some maintenance, some construction. We went up and built a new hunter cabin this year. We were able to, some of us give crew members bonus chances to harvest a sheep or a caribou or whatever. And so I took a couple of the guys that had those animals coming, and they were allowed to hunt while they were there working. So we did get out and about a little and had a look at what things looked like. Another great lamb crop is what we saw in our region. And the sheep populations look to be just doing fine. So yeah, I think it was basically a year off for the most part for the wildlife in the Mackenzie Mountains for our 8 outfitters, and it should translate into just a great season coming up, and I think not just coming up in 2021, but that should carry on down for several years, that we see the quality and the number of rams a little bit more than what we're used to. So.
Yeah, no doubt. And, that's definitely a theme amongst, the sources I've been chatting with, in preparation for this is, I think you and I chatted, Kevin Hurley from, WSF National had said the summary of what he's hearing from a lot of people is, tough year, but guess what? The Rams got a year off. And so age class is going to be, the 1 year better. And I think you're right. It's going to carry on for years to come. And, that doesn't dismiss the tough year that was financially in particular, but, if we do get, and not if, we will get through to the other side of this. Obviously there's a lot of hope out there right now in terms of, all the things that are different this year from last year in terms of how we, have adapted to this individually, but also, federally, provincially, territorially as well. And I think that was one of the big things last year is everyone was dealing with the unknowns. And it was just constant unknowns. And, here in BC, it was 30-day cycles, right? I mean, we didn't know what was coming down the pipe until, the 30-day mark of whatever the last round of, restrictions or rules, et cetera, were. And, and that brings up an important point that I know some of the other guests have brought up, and, people will see in the seminar. It bears mentioning that it wasn't for lack of effort as far as figuring out a way to keep a season in place for those that are obviously non-residents. From BC to Alberta to the NWT and the YT, there were a lot of efforts, a lot of time and energy invested in figuring out a way to get clients in. And at the end of the day, those were decisions that were by and large, if not completely out of our hands, right? Out of the provincial or territorial hands, the individual operator hands. So, we had to live by the rules that were put in place, and all we can do is move on from there. As it relates to, you mentioned the lamb crop, and I know we were talking about this winter, at least so far. Let's spend a bit of time there, Harold, because you shared some pretty interesting stuff for me in terms of just the dynamics within your territory and your outfit.
Yeah. So, I tend to be a very firm believer in the sheep pretty much know how to look after themselves. We do have events, severe weather events that can really affect populations, I think, is what I would say is the most important dynamic in the territories. As I told you the other day, from what I have noted in my years there, weather events generally tend to come through the Mackenzie Mountains in echoes or little stripes, and they don't, very seldom do we see a huge weather event that encompasses the whole range. It'll be a little bit in the northern end or a stripe in the middle, or Even within our own area. I gave you an example last year. The last year we operated a full season in 2019. We had 2.5 feet of snow on the Front Ranges on the north end of our area at our base camp, 50 miles to the south. We didn't have any. And that seems to me, even from when I'm there in the winter doing spring wolf hunts, that seems to be the way the weather is in the territories. It isn't big, massive systems that come through and affect the whole region. And that can happen, but most of those types of weather events that are a little bit unusual seem to be fairly localized to particular little areas. The summer of 2019, I know they had lots of snow in the south, where we had pretty nice weather in the north, other than that one storm on the very north end of our area. So I think the sheep are survivors, and if an area gets really bad snowfall where it gets deep, or the winds don't blow and sweep off those big plateaus, I think the sheep are perfectly capable and have had to do it before to move somewhere, if it's 20 miles or 30 miles away, to a range that is windswept or has had less snowfall, where they can survive. So there's always a danger, but I know we've seen the last 3 years, we've seen the best lamb crops that I've ever seen in my time there, and big, strong, healthy lambs. So I think our sheep are resilient and they're doing well. Yeah, there are sheep that die every year, whether they're in little avalanches or through predation, or some even get sick and die. But it's not. The populations are strong and healthy. It's not a generalized die off that I've ever seen. I think, yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's a fairly normal year in the north so far. Not scary amounts of snowfall or anything like that. So hopefully we see just a great bunch of sheep next year. And not all of the rams that had the year off this year are going to survive. There's going to be some die, especially in the territories where our average age of harvest is between 10 and 11 years old always. So those rams are at the end of their life expectancy anyway, and especially those big dominant rams that rut hard, they have a hard time making that winter, where they go into winter after rutting in November and December, skinny and beat up. So there's always natural mortality as well, but definitely we're going to see extra rams and lots of older rams for several years because of the year off. And so in that way, it was a good thing for the quality and the I guess even the variety of sheep that we will see, but a tough year for us economically, of course.
Yes, of course. And what do you? I mean, this will be. I know. I think I get the sense from you that this won't be an odd question, but what are you looking positively towards in 2021? We obviously talked about where we think the sheep population is going to be like, and the quality of those opportunities. But what else is on your radar as far as hopes and that positive outlook?
Well, I think a lot of us will maybe run an extra guide and try and, because we know there's going to be some extra rams, and try and make up for a little lost revenues in that we can maybe take a few extra rams this year. I don't want to get carried away and think I can take twice as many because we missed a year, but to take just a few extra, I think is probably is not going to hurt anything, and it's probably even wise on us, because if we don't, lots, some of those older ones will just die in the winter kill on us. So yeah, my hope, of course, is for travel restrictions to ease off. We've been in talks with the GNWT about developing protocols and safety plans that they will allow us to bring in. I know it's their desire to have us open next year. They realize the economic loss to the territory and the meat loss to the communities that we support with donations of wild meat. So I think those things are coming. Right now, with the spike in numbers across North America, it's not a good time to try and get the government to ease off, of course, but I think towards spring, things will change. It would be wonderful. You talked about those 30-day increments. It would be wonderful to know that with some advance, that we're going to be able to have a season. But that being said, we're pretty resilient. If we've got a few months notice, we can put together a season pretty quickly. You know, we've done it for many years, and most of us had almost everything in the pile already last year, so it's already sitting there. I know I don't have much freight to go in, because when we went up to camp to do some construction, we moved in a lot of the supplies that we will need for our 21 season already. And so I think everybody's, you know, really on edge, ready to go. We just need that thumbs up from government and those travel restrictions eased, and we'll be up and running in no time at all.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's something that Craig Kisselback from Terminus Mountain Outfitters, who who's on the seminar here as well, highlighted that, you know, the bulk of, well, I mean, certainly for their operation, but the bulk of the people he knows in the business, they did what they could to be in that, you know, sort of on edge, ready to go as quickly as possible, you know, in that sort of state or status. And, you know, with these remote outfits like you run and he runs, I mean, that's not easy. We're not talking about a drive-in bear camp, right? These are big operations, huge, you know, masses of land that require constant maintenance of that infrastructure and constant preparation. And so, you know, again, it's another example to me of that positive outlook into 2021, that, you know, you guys are ready. The clients, we know the clients are ready. And you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, all the controllables that we can focus on, or the community can focus on. It sounds to me, from everyone I've spoken with, like that was done. It's not like people put their foot up and, you know, cried themselves to sleep every night, or put their feet up, I should say. They made sure that they were either ready if it came on one of those 30-day moments notice type cycles in 2020, and because of that, they're certainly ready for 2021, which, you know, speaks well for those that are hoping to make that trip up to the NWT, the YT, BC, Alberta, whatever the case may be. I wanted to circle back quickly, Harold, to you know, that ability to take a few more sheep, a few more rams, obviously. And I'll plead ignorance on this. I'm not well read or up to speed on how the NWT runs a quota, if there even is a quota. And again, I have to plead ignorance on that, because living in BC, I know the BC system well, but, you know, BC doesn't have that flexibility to carry quota forward. It's use it or lose it, and there are you know, intricacies to how the BC outfitters are having to run their operations with clients that were booked in 2020 and that sort of thing. But for you guys, is that different, Harold?
Yes, it is. The territories has no quota system. The outfitters manage their own sheep populations, caribou, moose as well. There are no restrictions on our harvests other than bag limits, of course, and we're not allowed to hunt grizzly bears. But other than the restriction on grizzly bears, we take as many sheep as we feel the areas can support. The resident pressure is very minimal in the Northwest Territories. And residents on an average year only harvest about 10 rams out of the entire range. And, you know, out of 200 or 250 rams taken, that's pretty minimal. So and I think it's a testament to the quality of people that are involved in our industry, that we have the oldest average age of harvested rams of any jurisdiction pretty much in North America. The entire Mackenzie Mountain range, so the 8 outfitters, the average age of harvest has been over 10 years old for over 10 years. So wow. It's pretty impressive that we maintain that quality old age structure. And I think it's because everyone that's involved in the industry today is in it for the long run, and they don't want to beat up the resource. We carefully manage our populations and our harvests to make sure that we can deliver quality experiences for our clients and quality trophies for our clients. So, and you don't do that by over harvesting, right? So I think governments have to manage, especially in areas where there's so much resident pressure, but they have basically, I think, probably for lack of resources in the Northwest Territories since the outfitted hunting started in the Mackenzie Mountains back in the mid 1960s. The outfitters have managed their own harvest levels. And if you look at it historically, harvests have been more related to U.S. economy than to anything else.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
you know, there years when the harvest is really light tends to be when clients are pretty scarce. But that being said, like in the last 10 years, when the U.S. economy has been fairly strong, there's lots of clients. There's probably, you know, with some of the closures, the park expansions in the territories, some of the die-offs in parts of the other northern ranges, a few less white sheep on the market, we have not increased our harvest a whole bunch. We were kind of at that level where we were comfortable anyway.
Mhm.
And you'll see a little variation as if there is a localized die-off in some area where an outfit will take a few less rams for a few years till the things recover. And then, you know, we pretty much, we're there enough, and our presence in our areas is, you know, usually about 3 months a year. We can pretty much get a finger on the pulse of what's going on and adjust our harvest levels accordingly, right? So
Yeah, no, that's,
Yep.
I think that's a great thing to share. I mean, those that may be watching who, you know, have been looking at the, you know, either the territories, but certainly the NWT for years, may actually know the system better than I do. But I'm glad that we covered that, because, you know, that is, um, you know, as we well know, BC and Alberta have a higher proportion, well, a higher population base, obviously,
Mm.
and therefore a higher proportion of resident hunters that go out and chase sheep. And
Absolutely.
you know, what is truly unique and special about the territories is that population base is in there, in particular in the NWT. It you know, when we say the Rams got a year off, you know, I had a couple of guys say, well, you know, here in BC, that's kind of true, but there was definitely a little bit of a spike in guys coming into, you know, such and such outfit. But I also know well, that the statistics that have been shared with me recently is that even despite that, you know, the harvest numbers are way down. And
Yeah.
so it speaks to, you know, being able to have a solid year, assuming that, you know, clients can get in. And, you know, it is great for outfits like yours, Harold, and in you know, areas where there is a little bit of flexibility to maybe increase your take a little bit in one year, that you're able to do that. It's good for you guys. It ain't going to hurt the sheep. And it's great for clients that are looking to, you know, to get after it. And you know, I'd be interested to hear from people like yourself, you know, down the road, if there has been a change in the mindset. You know, if a person's been like, yeah, you know, one day, but after this, they're like, you know what, life's too short. Let's go get after it. And if there might be just a little bit of an upsurge of interest for all the outfits out there, whatever the species may be.
Yeah. Well, I know that we've had clients booking, you know, not a lot through the summer when the season was down, but yeah, our bookings they just keep trickling in as they always do. You have people call and express an interest, and if you say, well, we'll wait to see what happens with COVID, but no, we've got people phoning and emailing and booking hunts right through this whole thing. So the clients definitely haven't given up. They know that this too will come to an end, and we can get back to doing what we love to do.
Yeah, that's great. Last question for you. You touched on your spring wolf hunts. I think I heard you say that you'll be doing them again this year. That's the case.
We hope to. I'm not as hopeful on spring wolf hunts. We usually go the end of March or the first couple of weeks of April, just before the season closes in the middle of April. Get those longer days and warmer weather as much as possible. I'm not holding my breath on that one as far as travel restrictions. I'm still hoping that something will change by then, but I almost expect that my poor wolf hunters are going to have to wait another year. But we'll see what happens with that. If as soon as we can get government talking about safe travelers, I think that's a key to our opening, even in this summer, is a safe travelers program. So if governments can recognize people that have had vaccinations and realize that they can't present a risk, and those people are allowed to travel, I think that's our best bet for a quick reopening, right? We're obviously going to have probably special protocols and procedures in place. We're going to have to, much like Yukon did last year, approved safety plans and stuff. But I think as far as this international travel and even maybe travel into the Northwest Territories where they have so much fear, I think a Safe Travelers type program that's recognized nationally and provincially and territorially is our ticket. And so we'll see how that goes. We're obviously starting those talks with governments at the federal level and at the territorial level already. And we'll see how that progresses because I think that's our ultimate best hope is Safe Travelers. I know the Northwest Territories, there's only about 40,000 people in all the NWT. They had their first delivery of vaccines the other day, 8,000. So that takes them up to almost 20%. Right off the get-go of vaccinations in the territories. And that was one of the reasons I think the territories was so reluctant to allow any travelers in, was because they feel some of the remote communities where there's no medical facilities or at all are very vulnerable. So, and those people are at the top of the list to be inoculated. So, I think that should alleviate a lot of the concerns and the fears. It's one thing that worries me about this whole pandemic and some of the fear that's been driven. I think some of it, a lot of it may be beyond what the real, what we should really be afraid of. I don't think the risk is near as high as it's portrayed by the mainstream media. But to try and alleviate some of those concerns for not just outfitted hunting, but all tourism. Like I said, I'm chair of NWT Tourism. We did a study on resident sentiment for foreign travelers in the Northwest Territories, and it's just horrible. It went from foreigners were welcomed into communities and, culture was shared and all kinds of things like that, to where right now with COVID, they don't want to see a stranger in town at all. It's no different than BC, where people are phoning the police if they see a out of province license plate, right? So, we've got to rebuild that trust, and I think the vaccinations, when people feel safety through that, is the key.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I agree on all fronts that it's. Yeah, I mean, as we said at the outset here, it's been a wild and crazy year, and there's some realness to it, and there's a whole lot of weirdness to it as well. And
yeah,
I think we're all just looking to move on and hope that can happen quickly, and get back to some version of normal life and doing what we love to do, whatever that may be. So, Harold, I really appreciate your time this morning. Who knows when people are going to be watching this? Could be morning, could be night, could be 30 days from now, but really appreciate the time, and here's to a heck of a season in 2021, and fingers crossed that's what we end up with.
Yeah, appreciate it very much, Adam, and you have a great day, and a great 2021 wherever you wind up going as well.
Yeah, well, it's the sheep are on the brain as always, and now it's just a matter of figuring out where, right? Don't lack for opportunities here in BC, and I'm looking forward to hopefully a year that's a little bit more normalized.
Yeah, and I really look forward to 2022 when we can all get together in Reno again. And,
great
meet
point.
Face to face, and isn't that? Yeah.
Great point.
That would be great.
I think it was Keith Balford said on the podcast recently. He's said the same thing. He's like, I'm looking forward to 2022 when I can get back to spilling beer on people's boots and shoes in Reno, right?
There you go.
Yeah, there you
go. All
go.
right. Thank you very much, Adam.
Yeah, take care, Carol. Bye-bye. All right, folks, I am here with Tina Dixon of Dixon Outfitters. This is the Yukon Territory portion of the Canada Update for the 2021 Sheep Week. Tina, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pleased to be here today and having some conversation with other folks about something else besides just the pandemic, hopefully.
We'll do our best to avoid it. I think that's almost impossible to avoid it entirely, but
I know.
well, we're gonna, as per the other guests, we're gonna talk a little bit about the year that was, but we want to spend as much time as we can on what we hope to see in 2021. And so, before we get into those topics, though, Tina, provide a bit of background for the audience on your background, in the business, what you're doing today now with Dixon Outfitters, and how you got involved with outfitting in the Yukon Territory.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Many of you that are probably watching this have seen me in some aspect or another, and maybe outside of the outfitting, been involved with that for 20 something odd years, and also involved a lot with expediting, working with our expediting company I started, helping probably over a third of the other outfitting companies and businesses in the Yukon, and just really promoting the industry and supporting what we do up here and how to do it best on a local level, for new people, how to deal with government, which can be frustrating, and also support how to go about things, and also worked with the association quite a bit. So on a board level and on a staff level too, and special events. So try to cover it just as a Yukon ambassador, knowing lots about the industry and supporting the bigger picture, tourism.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because Harold Grindy had very similar, I guess, level of involvement in the NWT, right? And I was actually saying to somebody last night that, it's interesting in BC, which of course is the primary lens through which I look at things. We know well that guide outfitting is an integral part of the BC tourism industry, but there's a lot of other big things out there as well, skiing and mountain biking and all the general tourism. What I love and appreciate about the territories is, the guide outfitting and hunting side of things is very, 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 very important to those territories, tourism dollars and travel and traffic. And so I think it's very interesting to get the perspective from the Yukon Territory and the NWT, because I know how jurisdictionally how things were handled last year were quite, there was a lot of similarities, and of course when it comes to federal rules, regulations, restrictions, health orders, etc., we gotta live by that. But there are also differences in how BC, Alberta, the NWT, and the Yukon Territory handled things. So let's use that as our segue into the year that was, and talk a little bit about let's start with maybe the efforts that were put forth by the guide outfitting community within the Yukon to try and salvage a season, which we know well didn't happen. But I want to make sure everyone, watching this knows that, it wasn't for lack of effort. And, Craig.
Oh,
Kissel,
absolutely. We
Craig
didn't
Kissel,
sit on the sidelines waiting
exactly,
for
right?
the show to happen.
Yeah.
That's not why we're in this industry, right?
Well, exactly. And Craig Kisselback from Terminus Mountain actually brought to my attention the fact that there might have been a bit of a misconception that, it was our choice, your choice. And when I say our, I mean speaking on his behalf, that it was, the choice of the guide outfitting community to not bring in clients. And of course, that's not the case. So let's maybe start there with the efforts that were put forth to make the best out of 2020, but even though that didn't necessarily come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, we all know Yukon is a special place, and is we all operate differently, but there's a lot of synergies also, and that came really into effect when this was bigger than us, and we're usually pretty out there people, and our solution problem solving, business oriented. We work well, and definitely governments had some handcuffs on us, and coming up with creative solutions. And I think that's where it wasn't the end all be all. There was opportunities there if you were looking at it, and then the challenge side, right, with the borders, and that's a federal government thing. So getting beyond that, pulling together, lobbying governments, coming together with operational plans on how, one, showcasing the industry. What's our highlights? What can we do well? when it comes to COVID and keeping people safe and the backcountry, and showing and proving to other sectors in tourism, other adventure, other that there's an opportunity that we could possibly operate on a smaller scale. We all know it wasn't going to be on a big scale. There was a lot of emotion, frustration, anger. I'm being nice. I'll keep some of the other words that the behind the scene words out of this today, but to move things into action, and some of us on a business level, industry came forward to try and make things happen. So those that chose to operate on a last minute, which usually was a smaller scale, definitely happened. And the benefits of that is providing employment, right? For getting our crew out there, giving them some work, to those that work with horses, getting them into their maybe mountain sheep shape a little bit and not having them grazing mode. So that was definitely a benefit. And managing sheep, right? Harvesting some of those older rams that I know people, and I shouldn't say just people, but outfitters, and that should be. So I mean, hunters were keen. I think that wasn't an issue, and I think one thing that definitely, besides COVID, was weather. Yukon had some challenging weather, so for many of our American folks that are watching this, it was very difficult all over the Yukon. We had a ton of rain, precipitation, crazy storms. So if anything, the sun can only shine better for future years, and those sheep will be there,
Right.
make it
Yeah.
through. So we're having a really mild winter, so that's the other thing, which is nice.
Yeah, and you know that this will apply in varying degrees, but one of the themes that keeps coming up in these interviews, and you know, if the people watching have watched each of the updates from each of the provinces or territories, they'll have heard me say this, or the guests say this. You know, one of the silver linings is to a certain extent, the Rams got a year off, and so they're going to be that much older, and there are going to be opportunities next year. They're going to be, you know, as good, if not better, than whatever was missed last year. And it seems to be one of the things that everyone is thinking and feeling, and I think it means, you know, one of the things you said to me in our email exchange between our first contact and today, Tina, was, you know, we also want to make sure that as we talk about this through this update, we recognize that, you know, there are greener pastures ahead. It's not all, you know, doom and gloom and nasty business from last year carrying over into 2021. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncontrollables, obviously, but what do you see?
You have to definitely look on the brighter side, and I mean, we're marketers, right? I mean, we're an industry that has been, I always used to call us, like, being Dixon Outfitters is the oldest operating outfit in the Yukon. I haven't been here a long time, but 27 years, and with the outfitting, and we've always, through historically speaking, been kind of a ghost industry. We've been walked lightly on the land. Mining is another huge historical industry up here, and you know, the Dixon family have really seen a lot, right? Dealing with people moving here, building of the Alaska Highway, World War II, you know, continuous other crisis and challenges that have come forward, and at the same time being able to adjust. And I think for a lot of outfitters this year, from a marketing and from a client care perspective, is people that had to roll over their hunts or look at future refunds, cancellations. It also made the industry step up with brushing up on policies, and making your company that much more, because from contracts to liabilities to, I am sure just about, and I can confidently say that every outfit had to take a look at those business practices and deal with it and also communicate more with your client. And I know that's the big audience we have with the seminar, I'm sure, from local hunters to people wanting to book their first sheep hunt. All this and our experienced hunters, right, that have traveled and gone on numerous sheep hunts. You're still really looking at how the industry has supported you, but also how to move forward and make sure that we can keep sheep hunting.
Right. Yeah. And it's a common thread within the business community, right? If you've made it through it, which of course, the outfitting and the mountain hunting community, if anybody can adapt to this sort of stuff, it's probably that community. But even with colleagues or friends or whatever it may be that I have outside the hunting and outfitting community, the common theme is, we made it through this, and we're stronger, we're more resilient, we're more adaptive. We may not be better for it, but we took it on the chin, and we learned, we flexed some new muscles in a way, right? And so it's good to hear that from people across the business spectrum, because I think it speaks to the mindset required to be successful. And that's also translates to being successful on a sheep hunt, right? Is you need to be able to take it on the chin and still put another one foot in front of the other and try to get after that goal. From the standpoint of the impact from a conservation perspective, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that side of things, Tina. Obviously there are a lot of things that couldn't be done. We couldn't put a group of people in a helicopter. There's a lot of initiatives that I'm sure were planned, I know, across Canada and the US. Having spoken with Gray at WSF a lot, there were a lot of projects that had to be put on hold because of group restrictions or group size restrictions and those sort of things. But what did you guys see from the standpoint of the conservation side of the picture, as some of the outcomes because of this wild and crazy year that we just put behind us, thankfully?
Well, and I kind of look at it as there's still so much project and other outcomes that
Mhm.
are kind of that can spin off from here, and an opportunity to this. I wish that this probably would have been the year. Less disturbance on the sheep populations would be if government was going to do surveys. This was the year that would have been nice to have them out there, and not during our hunting season, right?
Right.
I would have been like, okay, if you're going to do a survey, this is the year to do it, right? Less people out, and it did give opportunity for more resident hunters to be out with COVID as well. So, if we weren't harvesting those older rams, there's an opportunity for, and I mean, we do have to talk about resident and non-resident,
Sure.
and that's another whole seminar in itself, but it is part of looking at all the players in the field, right? And conservation besides some of our regular hunting. Also, I think, the big thing for us, and I did get, of course, we're always curious of our harvest numbers. That's important to us, and looked at statistics for those folks that are coming here to hunt. Just to let you know, more sheep were not harvested this year than other years. Bottom line. And I put that out there, and I won't say what the resident versus non-resident, but and our non-residents were at Canadians, and a lot of outfitters up here were excited to be able to hunt with some folks from BC and Alberta this year, and other parts of Canada that might not have had the opportunity as well. And knowing that some of those sheep needed to be harvested, especially on a age average, which I will say, however, though, non-resident hunters, our age average was higher than residents this year, which is what, from an industry perspective, every year that we want to see. And so I'm glad, talking to the government department, that to see that we were still sitting at a good age average for conservation efforts within the industry, and that stands when you have to start putting numbers and statistics and base things over the years. So, however, I always look at, kind of as this rolls out, is how can we build on more programs for sheep conservation, and all these people sitting idle at home and sitting there on screen, and one thing is getting families and getting people. We are so much about, as a family business, who have invested so much more than just financially. When you talk to any supportive family business, it's a huge emotional connection as well, and opportunity to have more families out there because of COVID, getting out on the land, getting kids at a younger age out on the mountains hunting. And you mentioned Craig. I think, I'm sure he took his son out, and our son got to go out. He's usually guiding, they're working. So, there's definitely some opportunities to support more, and other guides also that usually are working, that also got to go out and share in the passion of hunting, but also being able to talk more because you had more time on your hands about the importance of conservation, hunting, and how we're all supposed to be out there playing in the field nicely as we're getting more people encroaching on our beautiful backyard, as I always say. So there was definitely opportunities to people seeing you on the street in August and going, hey, yeah, you guys aren't, Tina, you look calmer this year, because usually it's a panic, and that's an opportunity to talk about our industry and how we've been impacted, and then realizing the spinoff into the communities when people are asking, for meat contributions, that the industry have been working hard, and we're like, yeah, our Canadians took a lot of their meat home, that, people that hunted this year, because it's easier, right? They drove up, and then the aha moments of going, oh yeah, you weren't able to take, our American hunters, who usually that's our give back to the community, right? So that's when healthy dialogue and education and going about what's going on and the conservation, and hopefully more people getting out trapping this year. And we do have to talk about predator harvest and management, and we're having a beautiful winter and things still aren't operational. So another way to deal with some conservation efforts, and maybe get some more incentive programming in place to,
Right.
and not just supporting us, but the other industry of trapping as well.
Yeah, and that's, I'm glad you brought that up, because I hadn't thought about that as, one of the ripple effects that is, we all know that was, a byproduct of COVID, is people were outside more. Geez, we work closely with a lot of gear manufacturers and brands in that space, and it was a rough start to 2020, but then most of them, if not all of them, had pretty banner years. And that was stuff that people were buying to go outside and use. And so on the notion of trapping, that's something I hadn't considered. Is I'll be interested to see if there is an upsurge in interest in trapping, is whether that's in the Yukon or BC or Alberta and the NWT, because so many people are one of two things. They're taking advantage of the extra time and doubling down on the thing that they already love, or expanding into new avenues like trapping. If you're, a diehard hunter and you're like, yeah, trapping would be kind of cool to try out. Well, maybe this has been the time frame to try that. But there's also a lot of people that are just getting into this. This was the nudge they needed to really become, the diehard hunter they've been hoping to become. Right? They had the time, and they chose to use that time to explore these avenues, right? And there's just so many benefits.
It's like it's a rethink, and there's it's that reset button, and even from a local community perspective, we need those people out there.
Mm-hmm.
We have like over 400 trap lines here in the Yukon, but also for our future clients and hunters that are thinking of coming to the Yukon, they're having more time to hopefully also look into, that taking that next step of that first sheep hunt, or that next sheep hunt, and research and where to go, and seeing, what organizations and continuing to support, wild sheep, and because we're doing this virtual this year, and that's new for many people, but it's important still. And even if we're not there buying those tickets, you can do that. And getting your kids and family who never maybe attended, because a lot of young people go to the sheep show, and it's a fun reunite time. But now, buying that $50 to get you into the seminar, show that to your kids. It's an educational opportunity for them to sit there and enjoy Sheep Week as well. And or that classroom, or that talking about the pandemic of humans, but the pandemic of sheep, right? And everyone knows from the 1800s to the early 1900s what happened with wild sheep in North America. And that's a huge educational opportunity that can be jumped on in supporting sheep conservation.
Yep, no doubt. Well, I've had Gray Thornton and Kevin and Keith Balford and a host of people from WSF on the podcast, and at varying points over the last year. And, everyone settled on the same, sort of mantra is conservation doesn't stop for COVID. And so I'm really happy you brought that up, Tina, because it is a way to support the organization, but also bring more people into the fold. And I also know, having spoken with Gray about this, that same thing, this mindset of, okay, what's the opportunity here, not just the downside of, they expect that this virtual aspect of Sheep Week, although everyone is hoping for, of course, being able to spill beer on each other's boots in Reno in 2022.
And you can still spill beer.
That's
people
true.
Have big screens. Get together with a group and have some drinks and get some healthy dialogue going.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
book a hunt in the Yukon. Yeah.
No bias there.
No,
But point being that it is an opportunity to expand that reach, right? Expand, because there's a lot of people that I know that every year say, oh, I wish I could go to Reno. And, I always ask, well, why can't you? And they have a good reason. Usually sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's time. But here's an opportunity to be involved, to learn, to engage, to have fun, to just be a part of this, as Gray always says, this family that is very passionate about the mountains and hunting in the mountains and sheep in particular in this case, but other things as well, and of course conservation. So I firmly believe that from here on out, WSF and the sheep community is going to be stronger for it, and we're going to see, I think, a lot more people come into the fold through this medium that is the virtual Sheep Week.
Yep, and you can have your own party. That's what you have to promote. Yeah,
definitely. I love it. All right, Tina. Last point. I mean, you touched on some of this, but let's talk about what you're seeing. We're obviously very early in 2021 right now. I mean, part of me wants to ask, what do you foresee for the 2021 season? And I assume you're probably plugged into all the initiatives, all the efforts, everything that's going on. So I'm sure you're gonna have a good answer there. But let's look at this two ways. So let's cover that if you can.
Oh yeah, we can cover that, because if that is not on people's mind, we've gone through it once, and it's, we have trapline trips coming up, for example. We have I sit on the tourism board here as well, and are very closely connected with the other levels of government and the political side. But let's pray that there's no other pandemic on humans and wildlife is my goal, and that we have to keep moving forward as a business and an industry, and not sit on the sidelines. We've been through one season already, but contingency planning is key for this coming year. So not waiting for the last minute. It's an opportunity to communicate more with your clients on the realities as we come down to our calendar, timelines, hard dates to look at. We're lucky here in the Yukon, and I don't know if NWT as well, where many of my family live, we're getting the vaccine a lot sooner than many other jurisdictions in the rest of Canada. So I think that's an opportunity again that the rest of Yukon, because that's a big part, is feeling safe in inviting visitors, clients, backcountry people to come here, hunters, whatever you're doing, and people come here to the Yukon for that high-end adventure and that experience. It's all about the experience, as we know, that Yukon will be vaccinated a lot sooner than the whole population, because there's only 40,000 of us, which might be a ticket to maybe opening the doors to our border restrictions a little bit sooner than some of your larger jurisdictions. So that's one thing, and the importance of having the Alaska Highway and the connection with Alaska. And so I'm hopeful. I think one of our things is we have our contingency plans, our operational COVID plans in place from last season. So it's a matter of updating those quickly and working with government to have them implemented earlier if we need to do extra or go down that other trail to make sure that we can get things happening here. So I know everyone just keeps asking all the time, when are they opening the borders? I think it's going to be, closer to the end of June before something. But we will see. And I know it's, right now we're just working really hard. It's an opportunity to piggyback a little bit more with tourism and our other sectors, and even looking at mining, agriculture, all those, to be able to say, okay, if they can operate, we can operate again. And Canada just needs to be ready. And yeah, so I won't go on the political side of that because there's a lot of politics in the last couple of days going on with on both the Canada and US side. And so we have to be hopeful and we have to be ready, and government has to be ready. When that border opens, I need government, Department of Environment ready for me. I will be idling outside of their office the next day to deal with outfitting. and they're not going to be happy, but oh yeah, I'm going to be first one parking right there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And that's, I think that's a great way to cap things off, Tina, because it's, again, another theme. We've heard it from the others involved with the Canada Update is, there was immense amount of time, energy, and effort put into salvaging the 2020 season. We know how that ended, in varying degrees for varying provinces and territories. But everyone's ready. And right now we just need everyone to be ready, and then the governments to do their job to make sure that this can happen.
I'm going to bring the minister takeout dinner the night before if an announcement comes out, and tell her to have the team ready to roll, because it's crucial for us to operate. And we have our clients, have been so patient, and the world, and we just want to go hunting like everyone else. Just want to go to the mountains. Yeah, best place to be.
Love it. Well, thank you, Tina, so much for your time. Great material. I think we've sufficiently painted a very hopeful picture for the Yukon in 2021, and that's a prevailing theme across everyone else's view of where we're going. With of course the acknowledgement that some of it's out of our control, some of it's unknown, but everybody's ready. Everyone invested in what they needed to in 2020, whether they had a season or not, to make sure they were really ready for the 2021 hunting season. And I think that if we do see things change for the positive, it's going to be a heck of a season for those that choose to travel and come to the beautiful Yukon or the beautiful NWT or Alberta or BC, wherever it is that people are looking to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a industry, we'll be ready, and it gives opportunity for the families, the people that have put off their sheep hunts for a year or two. You can be in that much better shape and ready for the mountains, and bring a family member, bring a kid, get people out there talking about why we need to be back out there and the importance of outfitting, that we're part of the economy, and without it, it's the spinoffs are, well, we experienced it. So yeah.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Tina. I really appreciate the time, and best of luck in the 2021 season.
Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Good morning, everybody. Neil Beeman here. I live in Alberta, and I'm a bighorn sheep outfitter. We had a different year for sure in 2020, waiting for the border to open for us. You know, as everybody knows, they shut the international border in March. Waiting and waiting and waiting. Our spring black bear outfitters were the first affected by this closure. So they didn't get to do their spring bear hunts, and we waited for the summer and sheep season up here for the non-resident start the 1st of September. And everybody was anticipating we'd have news maybe on the 21st of August that we would have the border open. Of course, we were disappointed that it wasn't. So everybody was rushing to figure out what we could do to supplement our income. Of course, like everything else, we have staff in place for the year and, you know, commitments to supporting our staff and supporting their families. So some of us adapted and either looked for non-resident Canadians or Alberta residents to come up and hunt sheep with us. You know, we have management and stuff in our areas, and we want to continue that management. So for us to not be in the mountains, it was really hard. So I would almost 90% of the Alberta bighorn sheep outfitters took either Canadian residents or Alberta residents, in a limited number, of course, because it was such short notice, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and that's, you know, just diving right into things, Neil, that's seems to be one of the biggest hurdles. Like, of course, the biggest hurdle was the border was closed.
Yeah.
And then we had all sorts of, you know, provincial or territorial, you know, restrictions or regulations or health orders in place that, you know, everyone had to adapt to, whether that's just in your personal life or, of course, in your business life, like you're describing here. But the thing that everyone that has been a part of this Canada Update has said is the challenge of being on this sort of unknown path, right? Is the next round of, you know, updates from the health officials going to change things? Like you said, you know, there was fingers crossed in Alberta that, you know, come late August that you might see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, and those things just keep getting bumped and pushed and bumped and pushed, and it makes it very challenging to plan, you know, both personally and professionally, right, as a business owner. And so, you know, what were some of the things that either you individually or, you know, you were, you know, a part of from the standpoint of just, as I know well, being immersed in the management side of things in Alberta, or even on the, you know, the Guide Outfitter Association side of things? What were some of the things that, you know, the crew in Alberta did to try and figure out a way to, you know, salvage or get through this season? We obviously know now that it's behind us that unfortunately a lot of those efforts didn't result in the outcomes, you know, you guys were looking for, but maybe spend a bit of time on what was attempted so that people know that this wasn't for, you know, lack of effort in the guide outfitting community.
Yeah, we, you know, like I said before, we worked really hard in trying to get hunters to, you know, residents and non-residents to come up and hunt with us, you know, and we had to, you know, pick and choose who you wanted to take, and these are, you know, expensive hunts, so we needed to, you know, find the type of people that wanted to do these hunts, you know, with us and stuff. So I think in the management stuff that I'm quite involved with the Alberta government, we've been working on a management plan that is long overdue. Our last sheep management plan was in 1992, so it's now 29 years old. So we have been really working quite hard with that. And last January, we started a working group with a number of stakeholders at the table, and we all sat down and wanted to know what our values were and what we wanted to see with a management plan. It's kind of a new process, and it's taken a little bit more time than we wanted. And COVID has really kind of hurt that process because it's delayed us being together. The Zoom meetings are, it's kind of intimidating for some people for sure. And so I think that's delayed our process. We're going to have a survey going out here to past license holders, and that survey is going to say, what do Albertans and what do outfitters, sheep outfitters, want to see in the future of sheep management in Alberta.
Right. Well, and it's, when we spoke on the phone, pardon me, last week, you hinted at some of this for me. And I remember getting off the line and thinking, there's just another example of I'll pause for a second. Obviously, we know this whole crazy COVID situation has impacted a lot of businesses, especially those that rely on, for lack of a better way to put it, tourism from afar. But then there's this conservation piece, right? I know here in BC, there were, people weren't getting into helicopters to do counts or surveys or those sort of things. People, like you said, people weren't getting together. And yeah, we can do Zoom like you and I are right now, but it's not the same. And then, a really common thing I've heard from other parties in this space is just that everything was put on hold because the government agencies were too busy trying to figure out what the heck they were doing to adapt to this ever-changing situation. So, I think it's important for us all to recognize and realize that, whatever was happening out in the mountains and out in the wild, that didn't stop.
No.
Our ability to support and sustain and do the things we need to do to ensure, future populations of wild sheep was really impacted. It's not just our personal hunts or, our hunts for for the businesses. I'm not going to say our, because I'm not an outfitter, but for those that are in that business, it's, there was a major impact in that way. But there is, the big picture of what is this going to mean for populations going forward. Now, a lot of the people I've spoken with have said one of the, I guess, silver linings here is in certain ways, and this varies from one province or territory to the next, but in certain ways, we should see that there's an increase in that age class since there were just so many fewer rams taken in 2020. So I don't know if you have any, statistics or anything you could or are willing to share in that regard, Neil, but I think that's, I guess maybe call it a bit of a glimmer of hope for everybody tuning into this, that, there could be some positives from this whole situation as well.
Yeah. I did get some numbers yesterday from our senior wildlife biologists. And of course, with every other recreational activity, there was an increase in people in the mountains this year and stuff like that. We had a huge number of first-time Alberta resident sheep hunters buying licenses for the first time. And so that was up a little bit. But of course, Alberta sells approximately between 80 and 88 non-resident permits a year between rifle and bow and stuff. So we didn't have any of those visitors this year. So as what I see is that's a positive, because we've saved on a little bit of harvest with not taking those rams, and for sure our age structure is going to increase a little bit with not that harvest by those individuals. So another year those sheep get to grow older on the mountain, and if we have a great winter like we're having, that makes it great for our sheep population for sure, and our lambs. The lambs and ewes are an important part of our management plan and your sheep herd. And it's actually funny that your yearlings are very susceptible. The lambs are fairly hardy, but it's the yearlings after they've left their mothers and stuff that they have high mortality. So we might like nice mild winters, and we're getting one of those this year.
Yeah, that's good. seems to be pretty consistent amongst the other individuals that have been part of the Canada Update, is that it seems like we you know whatever higher power you believe in, they might have given us a little bit of a help, or a little bit of help this winter to you know add to that silver lining. So that's good to hear. And of course, we're recording this in early January, and there's a lot of winter left, especially in places like Alberta, where winter can sure hang on, or come out of nowhere, right? But that is good to hear. And when it comes to that increase in participation, I know amongst I'm a BC resident, have lots of friends that are obviously resident hunters. There's no question there were a lot of people that thought I wasn't sure about sheep hunting, but this year maybe this is my chance, right? Because the outfitters aren't going to be out and running their operations, and they might get a chance when they otherwise might not have. Now, I shared with you when we spoke on the phone some of the statistics I'm aware of in terms of like the harvest statistics here in BC, and similar to Alberta, despite the fact that there were more residents afield, and especially at some of those key times a year early in the season in particular. There's still a lot of sheep and rams obviously left on the mountain. And so if you're looking to travel to Alberta or BC or the territories, despite the fact that 2020 was one frustrating year, I think it bodes well for opportunities and age class going into the next few years.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. One of the other things I worry about is, being delayed, with the hunters that are aging, and we're all aging, so you kind of, you're kind of wondering, when we're going to get these hunters up there, and our visiting hunters that have booked a couple years ahead, and we're delaying this process. It's kind of, it's tough on everybody and stuff, and like you said, the sheep keep on living on the mountains. This hasn't affected them whatsoever. And when I was saying, it takes years to figure out, sheep hunting and stuff like that. And I was kind of excited to see a few more of these new hunters in the field, because they got to experience being up in the mountains. And yeah, lots of them were very, very green, and you kind of giggled at them to see what it was like with them. But we all started out green, so that's part of the learning process,
Yeah, no, it's a huge point, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I started rambling a bit there and didn't get to the point, which is exactly what you said is, if this year that was 2020 put a few more people in the sheep mountains, and therefore they're that much more passionate about long-term conservation and being a part of their, whether it's provincial and territorial agencies, or it's contributing to, of course, Wild Sheep Foundation, where this seminar is going to be, or who the seminar is obviously going to be hosted by, or is hosted by. I think if we added whatever the percentage is, more sheep hunters to the mix, therefore more members of WSF Alberta, Wild Sheep Society of BC Yukon, et cetera, then that is a good thing for conservation long term. And I think we can all agree that everyone's crossing their fingers, whether that's for business reasons or personal reasons, that we can get this stuff behind us as quickly as possible here in 2021, and get back to some version of a normal life. I mean, I don't know how normal it'll be, but I know, for instance, and the viewers watching this will have heard it, or will hear it in the update seminar, that in the territories, for instance, I mean, they're close to 20+% vaccinated already, which bodes well for travel, be that a Canadian resident or a non-resident of Canada. So there's some hope there, and that reminds me as well, Neil, of something you shared with me when we spoke on the phone about some of the programs that were put in place in Calgary, I think specifically, and I'm not going to pretend to know all about it, but maybe share some of that, because I think it was a good example of the
Yeah.
provinces, the province is trying to do what they could to support, the people of their province and the businesses in their province. Um, but at the end of the day, the borders are controlled federally, and that was out of a lot of people's hands. But there were some things put in place in Calgary specifically that I think were a good pilot program or a good example of how, as I said, the provinces were trying to figure this out.
Yeah, for sure. On November 2nd, the Alberta government, the province of Alberta, started an international travel pilot program out of Calgary International Airport. And that was, as soon as you arrived, it was a voluntary program, and you could volunteer for it. I'm sorry. And it was a swab, and within 24 hours you had your test results back, and if you were negative, you were allowed to get out of quarantine, stay away from vulnerable people, vulnerable institutions and everything like that, but you weren't quarantined as you were supposed to be for the 14 days. So that was kind of a good thing. I participated in the program because I went down to help out with a desert sheep in California, and I went through the program, flew into Calgary, had the swab done. 24 hours, I tested negative. 6 days later, I went back and got tested again. Results came back negative. So I didn't have to do the quarantine for 14 days. And a program like that could really help out some type of a safe traveler program that could be enhanced in other airports and things like that,
Mhm.
And the Yukon had another program up there. I wasn't quite sure of it, but it had to do with another safe program too and stuff. Because as you know, the Yukon was closed to all non-essential travel earlier on, but
Mhm.
they actually kind of lacked some rules, or I'm trying to think of the word. Tried to relax some rules to get non-resident Canadians in there, because actually at one time the Yukon was shut down to
Yep.
just Yukon residents only, but they got their medical officer to help out, and they got approximately 200 to 220 non-resident Canadians to go up there and support that industry. So that's a positive thing for sure, and some type of a program like that, we could do the same thing. There's lots of ideas floating around. We just need to try to communicate them with our officials and show them how important this industry is to Albertans and to households. And a lot of us outfitters live in rural communities, and there's huge spin-offs with non-resident hunting in this province, and it's a big industry, and the tourism industry too, with
Mhm.
lodges and backcountry camping and backcountry horse trips in national parks and everything like that. So
Yeah. And that's when you shared that with me, it was the first I'd actually heard of. I mean, I guess you could only call it a rapid testing program
Yeah.
in place in Calgary. And um, I'm not going to profess to know this about all parts of BC, but I don't, to my knowledge, believe we had anything like that in place, or if we did, it was not kept quiet, but was offered very very minimally. But I think the bigger point here is, if we look back on how this whole situation unfolded, right? We went from complete and total lockdown in March or thereabouts, depending on, the place we're talking about, to, some loosening of those restrictions. The summertime was somewhat normal. And then of course, as the fall and cold and flu season hit, we're where we are now. But you know, no matter who I speak with, there's a similar story of everyone was figuring this out as they went. Whether that was the health officials or individual business owners or people just personally. And I think we're just so much more prepared as best as we can be, because if we learned anything in 2020, it's you can't be prepared for everything. But I feel like all parties are in a better position to make quick adjustments and know what sort of health and safety protocols or testing programs or whatever it needs to be, what needs to be in place to get the economies open back up, get people back to socializing. I mean, that's, you can't really put a dollar value on that in certain ways, but we all know it's pretty darn important. And I feel like as much as last year was frustrating, we're in a better position to see 2020 return to, as I said earlier, some version of normal, because they've tested and trialed programs like you outlined at Calgary International. There's lots of changes to the restrictions. I think the health agencies have a better idea of what really matters and what doesn't, and are doing their best job, at least, to keep people safe, but at the same time, again, get us all back to work and back to normal life. And so I think we're going to see a much better ability for businesses and communities to open back up and get back to work.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think we all didn't really know what this virus was going to do to us, and we thought it would be over and done, but it's not. And I think it's positive with this vaccine, and I think you're going to see things get back to a little bit of normal. But I think the traveling hunter now is going to definitely have to probably be vaccinated, and we'll have to show proof of that vaccination. And I think we'll be rolling like that, and I think that's a good stage, hopefully we can get this vaccine rolling out here fast. And I heard the same thing as you. I heard that they're kind of working the northern provinces and territories first with this vaccine. It's probably a little easier because of less population in that country, and so once we get rolling with that, we want to. We're a big community, but a small community, and from outfitters from BC, Yukon, and the territories, we all want the same thing. We want to be able to enjoy our lifestyle, and we miss the hunters this year, and especially international hunters, because they live such a different life than us, and we like that. I miss the sheep week, going down and visiting. So I got on there last night and joined up, and not to win that desert hunt or anything, but I hope I can get chatting with some past hunters and some new hunters, and yeah, it's kind of an exciting thing. I was really pleased to see WSF go to that hard work to do something like that for sheep, for sure, and for us for mental help.
Yeah,
in
right.
a way.
Yeah, mental help and mental health, right? And that's
mental health.
Yeah. I spoke with Gray a number of times over the past year, and there's all the serious stuff we got to talk about, conservation programs and fundraising, and of course, the impact on be that hunters on a personal level, or of course, the guide outfitting community. And it always seems to kind of end on with a bit of a smirk of, but the thing that we miss as much as anything else is being able to tip a drink or share a laugh or whatever it might be in person in Reno. And I know that the crew at WSF really, I mean, geez, the amount of effort and energy they've put into hosting this virtual sheep week, a first of its kind, it is commendable. And like you said, it speaks to their commitment to wild sheep conservation, but the community at large. And if you're a first timer tuning in to what is the new thing we think of as Sheep Week, but you've never been to Reno, but you took advantage of this this virtual sheep week to more immerse yourself in the community. I hope that from this you see just how passionate the community is. Despite the fact that there can be disagreements, in varying degrees, at the end of the day, everyone is pulling for the future of wild sheep populations. It matters for your business, obviously, Neil. It matters for me and my view of the future. I mean, we were talking before we recorded. I've got two young boys that I want to share the sheep mounds with someday, and if that's going to happen, we've all got to stay committed to conservation and then working through whatever challenges are thrown in our path, right? Be that um, you know disagreements on how to manage, or some of the intricacies in BC, how quotas are handled and managed, all these sort of things. I mean, I guess my hope is that, I know it's not easy, but we look back on this year and say, there is a much bigger picture at play here, and let's band together and stay committed to the future of wild sheep populations.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the communication between resident and outfitters has always been, sometimes a little, that relationship's not been really great, and I think this year, one positive thing about 220 is that when we were in the mountains and meeting, hunters and stuff like that, they learned how our businesses worked, and how we, how we manage our areas, and educated them and stuff. And I think education's a really important thing. We're working on our disease program with this, as you guys are in British Columbia with Movi and everything like that. And I've seen stuff in other states down in Nevada and even California, from where I came from, with that disease is really, really scary, and we need to educate people on domestic sheep and goats and stuff, because our sheep population up here is very vulnerable to something like that, and we're trying to get legislation right now in Alberta passed through that. We don't have a lot of sheep producers on Crown land or public land right now, but I just saw an article from the CBC of a guy that was taking pack goats into the mountains. Well, that man had no idea that that domestic goat could transmit some disease to our wild sheep population, and he's in the Alpine with those goats. So I went to Alberta Parks and Environment, and I said, did you guys see this? And they had, some people had saw and some people did, but they're addressing things like that, and that's just another fire to put out. But education's so important for things like that, and communication with other stakeholder groups is to the benefit for conservation of all species, including, mountain sheep.
Yeah. Well, and I think I appreciate you sharing that, Neil, because it's, how would I put this? I think that's one of the, education, like you said, is one of the great opportunities for, collaboration and really a bridging of the gap between, the resident hunting and the guide outfitting and non-resident community, because at the end of the day, there's a whole Pandora's box to opportunity, and who's getting what opportunity. And we don't have the time, and frankly I don't have the knowledge to speak to that as well as I might like. But if we are committed to the future of wild sheep, and conservative management and conservative harvest, meaning that higher age class, then there's an opportunity to learn there. There's an opportunity to work together, I guess, is probably the better way of putting it. I just hope that from 2020 to your example of running into people in the mountains, that there's a few more of those positive interactions happening, such that the chasm doesn't feel quite so deep and wide between the two communities. And I had a bit of that this year myself. I reached out to a couple of guide outfitters, wondering if they had, a cabin that they'd be willing to rent to fly in and do a moose hunt from, like not guided, but if you guys aren't using it, we'd be happy to, to rent the cabin from you if you're not going to use it, out of respect and an attempt at collaboration. And I had a lot of really good conversations with a lot of outfitters that were happy to have a chat and talk about what they were and weren't willing to do, and it was all positive. And so I think that's not everyone's experience, I know that, but I also think that if we don't try, then it's only opportunity and sheep that are going to suffer in the long run.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're, as the saying is, we're all in this together, and we're all in this together with COVID, and I think we're all in this together with sheep management, and that's every stakeholder group at the table. You can't, everybody's got to have a little give and take with management, and I think that has to be totally addressed, and people have to be mature about it. We're in 2021 now, and management changes have to come for sure, and that's just the way it is. Everybody that's experienced sheep hunting, the harvest is not everything, and the mountains and the experience up there, and that's non-resident and residents combined. The biggest thing is that everybody was coming up for the experience or going on a sheep hunt for that experience. And it's important in that there's not conflict during that experience, and everybody can participate in having a good time with family and friends or clients, for sure, huh?
Yeah. Well, and it's, I think it's also worth mentioning that, you and I and anyone tuning into this probably well knows there's one thing to, do a pack trip through the mountains. It's another thing to be on a horse and chasing sheep in the mountains, or have a backpack on your back and chasing sheep on the mountains. It's a different view. It's a different experience. It's a different perspective. And I think it kind of gets into your soul a little bit deeper than just being, and I don't mean this in any way to be derogatory to people that are out there just hiking around or doing pack trips or skiing or anything like that. It's all great stuff. But we do know it's different when you like really, immerse yourself in those mountains and those environments and the habits of sheep and, the things you need to do to have a chance of being successful. It really, really connects you to those places. And we need that. We need more of that. We need that from residents, to your point of more people being out in the hills. We, the non-resident dollars support, those, your individual management efforts, and of course the broader agency management efforts as well. And we got to keep that in mind, even though there can be friction at times. And look, I know it's simple to say, not easy to do, but I just hope that coming out of 2020, we're willing to be a little bit more collaborative than maybe we once were in certain ways.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
Okay, Neil. Well, I really appreciate your time this morning. I don't want to keep you any longer. This is great information. I forgot to prompt you to share your outfit name at the beginning there, so make sure people know what your outfitter name is. I mean, obviously you shared your name, but the name of the operation.
Yeah, our outfit's called Saddle Mountain Outfitters, and we operate in central Alberta. And in Alberta, we have between 18 and 19 sheep outfitters there, and all those guys are hardworking individuals, and they love hunting sheep in the mountains, and every one of them is a conservationist too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's great, Neil. Really appreciate the time, like I said, and I'll let you get on with your day there. And
thank you.
Let's hope this winter stays nice and mild for you.
Yeah, let's hope we have this is a great sheep week, so let's hope it continues and our winter's good.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Neil.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ed. Yeah, bye-bye.